Hey, folks, welcome to the Generational Gap. How are you doing tonight, John?
Oh, fantastic.
How's
Yeah.
your millennial self hanging in there with all the strife and craziness in this country today?
Yeah, it's just better to laugh at it so you don't cry.
Folks, good to have you tonight. Robert, of course, your resident Gen Xer, and then, of course, John, our millennial crybaby. And we've got some show lined up for you tonight, right, John? Got a little
Do
something
we?
something to talk about, some bullshit to talk about because there's a lot of crap going on. Little crap,
Yeah.
little here, little there. Hey, we were, I got to say, because in for full transparency and responsibility, we were supposed to do our first shooting the shit episode on Monday night, and was unable to because I was a wreck. And John doesn't know how to do the stream by himself.
Yeah.
These kids don't know how to do anything these days. So, but keep your eyes open. We will be coming at you this coming Monday night with our first Monday night episode. So be prepared for that and watch for us to go live on Monday night. It's not going to be a crazy show or anything like that. It's going to be about an hour of us talking some crap about things that's going on, whatever floats our boat, right? Something to that effect.
Yeah, we're just going to be doing basically a longer shooting the shit episode.
Now, John, you've got, or is it state secret?
No.
What else you're doing on Monday?
Yeah, so on Monday I'll be recording, I believe like an interview with our good buddy Jay Edgar. You'll remember him from
Yep.
our New Year's Eve stream. We talked to him for about 4 hours. It was a lot of fun. And yeah, he asked me to be on his show on Monday. And so I don't think he goes live though. So I'll let you guys know when he publishes it, and we'll put it in the description of our next stream, I'm sure.
And he asked for John. He didn't ask for me, so that should be
Yeah,
very telling.
should be telling you who's better.
They always seem to ignore the pretty ones. I don't know why that is. Why do you think that is, John?
Jealousy, probably.
Is that what it is?
Envy. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't cotton to that kind of jealousy, but I don't really have anything to be jealous of because I mean, look at me.
Hmm.
So, John, anything exciting happening in your world besides your fancy dancy interview coming up? Anything great for you
Um,
in your
I'm
world?
actually going to be going to not this weekend, but I believe next weekend is the Scottish Highland Festival, the Scottish Highland Games in Winter Park, I think, somewhere
Really?
in Central Florida around here. Yeah,
What day are you going?
the 19th and the 20th. So it's a Friday and Saturday, or Saturday and Sunday, something like that.
So you're not gonna be. You're gonna be out of D and
Well,
D.
no, maybe depends
Oh,
on which day it is.
that's so
It's either
so.
Friday and Saturday or Saturday and Sunday, something
Either
like
way,
that.
Saturday is one of those 2 days on
Yeah, I
either way
know.
you go. So that
Yeah,
means we're not going to have you for D and D. I mean,
yeah. But
I,
if it is a Friday, I'll still be here for the show, but I'll probably be drunk as fuck on $30 pitcher beer.
oh yeah, if it's going to be if you're going on, you got to not go on a Friday or you won't be able to do the show. And I would much rather you do the show than go to some stupid Highland festival where you don't know anything.
That's right. Yeah, me and Midget B are actually going to be there together.
What? He's coming
Yeah,
down?
yeah. At least that's what we've been planning for a while. I don't know if he's actually still doing it.
I got. Let me check my Facebook page. I didn't see the invite for that.
I mean, you're welcome to come. Shit. It's around your neck of the woods anyway, I think. I don't know. Midget B knows where it is. He's driving
What'd you say
anyway.
it
So.
was? Winter Park?
I did say that, but I don't know if that's true. I could be lying.
You're just going to tell me somewhere, and it's not really going to be there, huh?
Facebook.
Facebook.
Yeah, we're gonna give you the wrong address, so you show
It's
up at like some
typical.
random person's house.
It's typical. Typical.
Winter Springs.
Winter Springs. Oh,
Winter Springs.
that's out. That's actually out further from where you're at. That's
And he
past you.
called
The
you.
go
He
out
called
red.
me a cunt.
You go out Redbug Lake. You
Yeah,
keep
whatever.
going. Keep going further out towards Sanford. Kind
Yeah,
of in
whatever.
that way.
But yeah, so that's gonna be a lot of fun. It's actually a tradition. We go every year. It's pretty fun. Very expensive beer though. It's like $30 for a pitcher.
Are you fucking kidding? Why go there?
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. A lot of feats of strength and ability.
Do you enter any of these
So,
competitions?
no, no, I don't.
So you just go to drink the beer and watch other people.
Yeah, watch other people be like super strong.
So you go drink beer and watch men.
There's women too,
Why don't you just save money and go to a gay bar like you normally do?
because there's women's versions too. But I mean, they might as well be men. They're big as fuck.
Right. I
They're
mean, come
buff
on,
as hell.
John.
Like, oh man, women.
If they're tossing fucking telephone poles and stuff, are they really a woman, John? I mean, come on.
Yeah, I know. It's right. Drink
Burly
and watch
women's.
burly women's. I wouldn't call them women's to their face though.
No, not if they're burly. Not if
Yeah.
they're burly.
Yeah, they're pretty fucking stocked, man.
So, Mitchell, how you been, buddy? How you been? Haven't seen you in a bit. It's been a long bit. Wow, I hate having him gone. I mean,
Was he gone? When was he gone?
Well, like gone out of town.
Oh,
like
yeah,
in another
yeah.
place.
Yeah, I know. It sucks. I used to live right next door to him. I mean, I used to live with him as well, but used to live
Well,
right next door to him too, and that was nice.
Well, I
Go over
mean,
there, knock on his door, and
but at least it was an amicable breakup, right? So you guys,
No, I did
when
not
you
consent.
when you
Hey,
Seawall
CW
was all
Seawall. Yeah, sorry,
let's go with
I
Seawall.
fucked that up.
seawall, like if the ocean was nearby, like
Yeah, like Trump's wall that's gonna go out into the sea.
to the sea of salsa.
That's right.
So that's about it, huh? The Highland Games. That's your big excitement. That's everything you've got planned in life. Is that on your bucket list?
No, it's not on the
one more
bucket
year
list.
at the. Do you have a bucket list, John?
Not really. I mean, I'm sure I could make one if I wanted to.
You should go ahead and plan and get one prepped, and have
Yeah.
it. Yeah. You gotta
Maybe
be
we'll do that on Monday. We'll go through and each make a bucket list live on the air. Sounds like fun.
I've actually tried to think of things that I would have on my bucket list, and I can honestly say, seawall. Yeah. I can honestly say that as I think of things, one out of every two things I think of, I'm like, oh, I've done that. I did do that. I have done that. And
Yeah.
most of it's in a drug or alcohol induced haze that I'm remembering it from, so I can never be
Right.
quite sure. So I might as well just do them again.
Yeah, yeah. Do them a little bit more sober, but I mean,
Rebucket.
a re-bucket list. Yeah.
A rebucket list. The fuck it bucket list.
Nice.
Hey, John.
Hey,
I-
Robert.
I saw something interesting today, and I mentioned it a little bit to you, but I think this is exciting. We've got a government shutdown going on. I don't know if anybody knows this.
Woo.
Did you
Hell
know
yeah.
about this?
I heard something about it. I think.
Hmm.
I mean, it's not like everyone's been talking about it for every day,
But
all
what's
day, past
wh-
3 weeks.
what I found interesting is that while that's going on, and nobody's getting anything done in Congress, whatever, they're still putting laws out, right? Or trying to
yeah.
get legislation passed. And currently, right now, they've put forth a new legislation, which is numbered 420. And
Yeah.
it is a bill to legalize marijuana in the United States as a recreational drug.
About fucking time.
And and I'm hoping that with a Democratic House, we might get it in front of the Senate and potentially get it passed. Now, what they're saying is the Oregon Representative Blumenauer's bill is actually titled the Regulate Marijuana Like Alcohol Act and would remove cannabis from the Federal Controlled Substances Act. Michigan voters passed a similar law in November that legalizes the possession of 2.5 ounces of marijuana outside the home. 2.5 ounces.
That's fucking awesome.
Could you imagine walking around with 2.5 ounces of marijuana on you in Florida?
Yeah. That'd be ridiculous.
No.
Yeah.
No, I can't imagine that.
That'd be stinky as hell, though.
Plus possession of up to 10 ounces inside the house, and their residents can grow up to 12 plants.
Fuck yeah.
My wife's a gardener.
Oh yeah, that's true.
she she can grow plants in rock. I'm just saying. So the bill has been introduced in U.S. Congress on Wednesday. Will take marijuana off the federal controlled substance list and establish a nationally regulated industry overseen by the ATFE. While the bill number may be a bit tongue in cheek, the issue is very serious. Our federal marijuana laws are outdated, out of touch, and have negatively impacted countless lives. This is from Blumenauer himself. He said in a press release, Congress cannot continue to be out of touch with a movement that a growing majority of Americans support. It's time to end this senseless prohibition.
Hell yeah.
And he's been a long-time advocate of marijuana at the federal level. And he's authored a blueprint that for his like-minded Congress members on how to achieve the goal now that the House of Representatives has a Democratic majority. So, Uncle Rick goes to Michigan. He was telling me about that. If you get up to 5 cards, grow 60 plants. Nice.
That's
5
crazy.
cards. So, what do you
You'd
mean
probably
by
have to have
cards?
5 people. You probably have to have like 5 people living in one house or something like that. I don't know. I don't know the
Or
specifics of it.
unless this is Michigan. Did Michigan? I'm trying to remember if Michigan is legal for recreational or just. There's been so many states coming on board with marijuana that it's hard to keep straight who's got it recreational, who's got it for just medicinal.
Medicinal, yeah.
But maybe that's what he means. If it's medicinal, you have to have the cards.
Oh,
Uh,
one guy with 5 max permits. Why would you need more than one permit?
and why would you need more than 12 plants for
Oh,
personal
boy,
use?
got a license for that permit, mate. You know, it's fucking ridiculous. Lots of permits.
So now the key is to get an open and working government in place. Um, I can promise you that and this has always been one guy with 5 max because fuck you, it's a plant. Okay, right, I get that, but it ain't like growing. It ain't like growing fucking rose bushes. Okay, this is you know. I mean,
Could be.
there's just so many roses. But of course, I guess what there's so many strains. So 60, are there 60 strains? Would you just grow one of each strain? Is that the way to go about it? But
Yeah,
anyway,
that sounds pretty good. Make
um,
hybrids and shit.
this has been an issue. This has long been an issue for me since I was much younger. Because of course I started smoking marijuana when I was in my late teens, early 20s. Whenever I started
Yeah.
using regularly, without realizing that I was actually medicating, my condition, it just seemed to make everything perfect. I don't think that's practicable.
Practic-
Is that a? That's not
Practicable.
a word.
Practicable?
He's going to make words up,
Yeah, what a dick.
right? He thinks he's Shakespeare. But when I was in college, I did a presentation, a speech on this very issue. I looked into a lot of things, and I found out just how much hypocrisy there is in our federal government surrounding this issue. And one of the things that was the most standout to me about this issue is the sheer amount of money that this country can make off of legalizing marijuana.
Well, not only that, but we cut our spending on, arresting people and prosecuting them for marijuana possession and sale and shit like that. So not only are we not spending as much money, but they're also making money off of it.
Well,
So
understand.
it's a win-win.
But understand, legalizing marijuana won't stop the war on drugs and won't stop them from apportioning the same amount of money to the
Right,
war on drugs, right?
right. But the most of the arrests are for marijuana possession.
Yes, we will have a lot fewer people going to jail.
Right.
That is a fact. And the numbers have already started dropping now that it's being legalized in so many states.
Yep.
But if we go back to the early 1900s when prohibition was in effect, I worry about the long-term consequences, especially loss of productivity. Actually, just by way of to help you understand, Seawall, to a certain extent, for those of us, who are actually, medical users like myself, I am more productive under the influence than I am without.
And not only that, but like marijuana was legal for most of human history all the way up until about, what was it, 1930 something? 1935,
1939 is when DuPont put out,
Mm.
helped fund and put out Reefer Madness, which was the killing blow.
Okay, yeah.
And the
Yeah,
big,
so yeah, my point is though that humans in general have been very productive even before it was made illegal. So, I mean, to say that, uh, that we're going to lose a ton of productivity, maybe at first there might be a dip in productivity because, it's brand new and people, it's brand new to mine and your generation because we grew up during the prohibition. But I mean, shortly after, it's not going to be a problem.
well, think about it. If we can use alcohol as a model for this,
Yeah,
because
that
when
too.
alcohol was prohibited, there was well,
Yeah, and I mean,
and I understand you're talking about recreational users. I do get that, Seawall. But think about alcohol. In the present day, how much does alcohol impact our level of productivity? Right? It's a recreational drug itself. That's it's been legal. It was legal, then it went away, and now it's legal again. And you're right, Midget B. Marijuana is a lot less popular with people than people actually think. Most of the people who think it should be legalized just find it, it goes to what John was saying about the money that we spend on it. A lot of people just
Mhm.
don't want the money expenditures that we
But
deal
yeah,
with.
most people go for pragmatic reasons and principled reasons rather than, because they want to just smoke all the time.
There are a
Yeah,
lot
the
of people
taboos going.
who are comfortable with it being legalized and they don't ever use it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's going to be a year or two where people are just going, having a great time with it, and I get that. But the revenue stream that, I mean, it turned this country around when they removed prohibition with alcohol. I mean,
Yeah.
it brought us out of the Great Recession. It brought us to a point where we were actually moving forward as a country. We had money, we had a good, stable economy. It was a positive impact, and marijuana is much the same way. And
Yeah.
they've done exactly what I expected they were going to do with Colorado. Colorado
Hmm.
has been the petri dish, as it were. They've watched what happened. And, what was it? I want to say it was either 1 or 2 years after they legalized in Colorado, they were actually finding they had to lower the taxes on it because they were having an excess of income from marijuana
Can you
sales.
imagine that? Like, yeah, we got to lower the tax on it because we're making too much money. Like, what?
Right. How do you have uh, well, yes, it does coincide with the rise of the war economy. There
Yeah,
were
we
a lot
started
of things going
manufacturing a
on,
lot.
but the money that was being spent across this country to keep alcohol prohibited was much the same as what we deal with marijuana.
Yeah.
And it wasn't stopping anything, much like marijuana. I mean, people are still
And not
getting it and still using it, whether it's legal, medical,
right.
or whatever.
And you know what's funny? They even had medicinal whiskey so that people could get around, the prohibition, which I think is really funny. But no, I mean, it also helped to stop, organized crime. It didn't stop it completely, obviously, because other things were so illegal. But during the alcohol prohibition, that's where you had guys like Al Capone, and the other, the other guys, whatever they're named for. But they were big in like bootlegging and trafficking illegal alcohol, and they made a shitload of money off of it.
Have you
And they
ever have you ever seen the show Boardwalk Empire with
no,
Steve Buscemi? It
oh
was
god,
it was on HBO, and it was awesome. It was set during Prohibition, and
hmm,
he was a kingpin in Atlantic City, and his big industry was bootlegging alcohol.
right,
And it was and it was he was Nucky Thompson, I think is what his name was, and it's supposed to be based off a real person from back in the time.
mm,
And yeah, I mean, it's the sheer amount of alcohol that he was moving and what was going around. Yes, they had to nail him on
wait,
racketeering.
was it
He's
racket? I thought it
talking
was
about
tax evasion. Wasn't it
most
tax evasion
most
for
of
Al
them.
Capone?
Al
Same
Capone
for Al
was
Capone.
racketeering.
I thought
Well,
it was.
tax
I thought it was
evasion and
tax evasion.
racketeering. I think it was both. They wound up getting him on both things.
Maybe.
Most everybody back then, that's the avenue they went because it was harder to prove everything else.
Hmm.
But they could usually prove things. It was the IRS was the ones that was running around enforcing this shit, right?
Right.
It was the tax guys going out and chasing, organized crime before, because this was before we had ATF and all of that, right?
Yeah.
So the tax man was doing it.
The
So
tax man.
it was, this is what we're going to see. If we can get it legalized across the board in all 50 states from a federal level, I can promise you it could very nearly be the thing that starts to decrease our national deficit. It
Yeah.
could be a way to get us in the right direction towards a more balanced budget and reduce the national debt. I mean,
Yeah, definitely.
there have been economists that have said that this is, it's impossible for this not to be a multi-billion-dollar industry because it already is a billion-dollar industry in states that have it legalized for recreational use. Do it nationally. And we're America, right? It's bad enough that Canada beat us to the punch, right?
Yeah.
But
Fucking Leafs.
But the problem is it requires two things. It requires that the federal government, in not so many words, admit that they've been fucking lying. They were wrong this whole time. Because they took something that was actually being used in medicines constantly, tinctures and remedies. Everything, so many things had marijuana in it, right?
Yeah.
But they would have to admit that they've been wrong all these years.
I forget which one it was, but there was actually a British queen who used to use like the resin, I think, to like alleviate menstrual cramps. Thought that was kind of funny.
And then there's Big Farm, and this has been the reason why marijuana probably could have been legalized from a federal level if Big Farm wasn't for the last, I'll say the last 20 years, been trying to find a way to chemically reproduce THC, right?
Yeah.
Because they came out with Marinol, and it was a
Right.
synthetic version, but it was nowhere near, didn't have near the same effects, and it had negative impacts that were far greater than marijuana. So they've never been able to come up with a reasonable substitute for it. And they were kind of the reasoning behind it being prohibited in the first place and being classified as a Schedule I drug, right?
Yeah.
But they haven't been able to do anything to replace it. And so it's if it can get through the House, the Senate's going to be the big thing. But the bonus there, if we look at this government shutdown, this whole wall debate, which we're about to talk some about, if we look at that, we see that the wall itself was hinged on 5 Democratic votes to get the 2/3. Maybe we can swing that in the Senate this time with this.
Yeah, maybe.
But we've got to end the shutdown, right? So let's talk about the shutdown, John. Are you a fan?
Yeah, generally.
You're a fan of less government, right? You love less government, but do you?
It's funny. I actually like what Jay Edgar was saying when he was on our stream on New Year's. He said the worst thing about the government shutdown is that it'll eventually reopen. Thought that was pretty good. I'll enjoy that.
But let's be honest. We don't want a non-working government. I mean,
Well, we
seriously.
We don't want them to not be working and still getting paid.
I mean, well, we're seeing essential parts of our government right now are not happening, right?
It was not essential. It's only non-essential parts, which is most of it. Like the military is still working, right? I mean, we didn't just bring everyone, all those troops home and be like, all right, well, I guess we're not having a military right now.
Yeah, there's still a lot of people out there working, but they're working and not getting paid. And the military, the sad part for the military is they don't have a choice, right?
The military is paid through February, I believe. So they have time.
Well, but if they weren't getting checks, they couldn't go AWOL.
Well, right. Yeah, I mean, they're also not in a position really to, going anywhere, spending it really, unless they're not, in a combat area. Anyway, go ahead.
Today marks the 21st day of the government shutdown, which effectively means that this is that ties the longest period that we've had a government shutdown in our history. And it's
Yeah.
expected it's going to continue on for who knows how long. Now they're saying this is something that we found latest news report on this is that if the shutdown lasts 2 more weeks, the cost of the economy will exceed the price of the wall. So they're expecting in 2 weeks' time that the cost of this shutdown is going to reach the point, reach $6 billion, which
Yeah.
is about what is that? The wall was going to be $5.7 billion,
Yeah.
right? So, so I guess it comes down to
Which one's cheaper?
which one's cheaper, right?
Yeah.
But if you look at this, if we're going to run up a bill of $6 billion, now the wall costs $11.7 billion.
Right. So maybe they should just give in.
It's tough to have that realization, but I kind of get where you're coming from.
Yeah.
But I think the shittier part was that earlier this week, in response to this, the Senate said we want to put some legislation in front of you that will allow us to take care of some of these people who are working for the government and not getting paid. And basically, Trump said, if you put that on my desk, I'm going to veto it. If we've got no movement here, then I'm out. And he washed his hands and he walks away from the conversation. The S&P Global, nobody can see the forest for the trees. That's true. Everything's fucked right now. But this is this is so, people are may sit around and think, well, this isn't affecting me really, right? But in the next 2 weeks, by the end of this month, people are going to realize the impact of the government shutdown, especially anybody who's already tried to file their taxes.
Yeah.
Because tax returns aren't going to get processed now till we get the government up and running. The Air Traffic Controllers Coalition has filed a lawsuit today against Donald Trump's administration for the shutdown because they're not getting paid. They're getting $0 paychecks. These are the guys that control the planes in the sky.
Wait, are they actually government workers?
They're under the FCC. I believe they're not the FCC, but
FCC, the FAA.
The FAA. They're under the FAA. The FAA. So yeah. So these are the guys that are controlling the traffic in the air around our airports.
Yeah.
And they're fed up. Now, I don't know about anybody else, but I don't know that that's a group that you want not giving a shit about their jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Just like, even though I know you don't have a high opinion of them, but even, the TSA, you may not think they do a great job or that they've got failures, this, that, and the other, but the bottom line is they're the only watchdogs.
I mean,
they're
have you been through
many times?
Yeah, so you know what they do. I mean, you know how they look. They're just defeated people to begin with.
I haven't seen,
there.
but I haven't. I don't agree with that. I mean, I like over the last 5 years, I've probably flown a half a dozen, 10 times.
Yeah.
Okay, and there are a good mix of them. I mean, there are people that are taking their job seriously. There's others that are just seem aggravated to be there,
Right.
and others that just don't seem to give a shit. I had a good friend, a neighbor that was a TSA here in O-Town, and she took her job very seriously. She was focused on, it was about safety for her. She knew that she was that line, right? And and there are, like Teresa and I have flown. Since we've been married, we've flown 2 or 3 times. Every time we go through, she gets pulled.
Why?
And very simply, because she's a gardener.
Okay.
And she works with fertilizer.
Oh, gotcha.
She gets pulled and has to have her hands checked every single time she flies.
That's funny.
So they are on top of things. right? They are
Yeah.
seeing things. They are looking for things, and they're not, nothing's perfect. But again, this is a group of people that you should probably want to keep them paid so they're staying on top of their job, because now there's reports that there's mass sick calls coming in, people not showing
Oh,
up
well,
for
yeah,
work, that kind of
absolutely.
thing. And it's like, well, okay, so and I know that off mic you suggested that the airlines hire private security instead, get rid of the
Hmm.
TSA, have them. But the cost of airline tickets, when we have to foot the bill for that, for that security, because if an airline's going to do it, they're going to go full bore, right? They're going to
Yeah.
have mercenaries in there,
I
doing the
don't think
fucking
it's that.
checks, right?
Most
There's
likely, most likely they would just hire ex-TSA agents.
Yeah, they're
You
no,
know.
well, yeah, but they're going to have a cavity check line. They're going to have a strip search line. I mean, they're just,
I
but
mean, I'm sure it'll be more efficient. You'll be able to get through faster.
needless to
You
say,
know, you
from
know how
the
they have like 16 of those like checkpoint things. Yeah, they'll actually have all of them open instead of just one. You
But
know.
you've seen the fun that goes on with airlines these days, all these different things that are happening on airplanes. Do you really want them in charge of the security? Really?
Who?
The airlines
The
themselves.
airport? No, the
No,
airport itself.
well, the airport's still going to pass the cost on to the airlines.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how all that works. I don't know where the costs come from and all that.
The airport
But
doesn't want to take on the cost. They're going to pass it on to the
I've never run
airlines.
an airport. I've never run an airport before. So
I mean, one way or the other, it gets passed on to the consumer, right?
yeah,
Even TSA costs you, and your tax dollars are going
tax
to that,
dollars.
right?
Yeah,
This, that, and the other. So, but these are important things. It's the kind of thing that I don't know. It's how many people? It's just so many people, and again, to me, it goes to the the issue of these are American citizens. I don't care if they work for the government or not. These are American
yeah,
citizens, and you're shitting on them. So, another facet of the shutdown is our FDA. So the government shutdown is even curtailing food inspections. So we're looking at a group. The FDA they're in control of watching 80% of the food that we take in, right? That we're out there buying in grocery stores, restaurants, etc. 80%. And now the FDA is not even able to do their job efficiently, if at all. The FDA typically inspects approximately 160 food service inspections a week. So that adds up to a lot over the course of a year, right? So they're out
yeah.
there. They're covering the United States. They're looking at 80% of our food. They're doing their due diligence. I mean, what have we seen in the last couple of months, 3 or 4 months? The romaine lettuce, iceberg lettuce, potential issues with avocados, foodborne illnesses are rampant if we're not careful, because if somebody's not keeping up with the sanitation that happens at these places don't give a shit a lot of times, right? So if there's not somebody watching them, well, fuck it. And the food processing plants are the key to me. This is where it's most important, where your
Yeah.
chicken's coming from and where your beef's being handled at, right? And where the
Hmm.
vegetables are being cleaned and processed. Those are key places that need to be watched on a constant and regular basis. Um, and now they're not. So how is this going to affect us? I mean, they're trying to, according to this report, they are trying to scramble enough money together to bring back maybe 150 inspectors by
There you
next
go.
week. Maybe 150 inspectors, but think about it. I mean, the
Yeah.
hopes that these guys, they're going to have enough money to get these guys out to 160 places a week, right? So there's
Hmm.
one place for each person every week, but traveling and going to these places, because you got to go all over the United States. That's a lot of fucking money.
Yeah. I mean, I'm
I
sure
don't
they'll
know.
have them like regionally, so like you're in charge of these three, in this region, you're in charge, so they're not like just flying from one end of the country to the other all the time.
Right. So but they they do their job, and still, even though they do that job, and this is this could speak to failure on their part, but I don't know that it necessarily does, because it's a big fucking industry. Food is a big industry in this country, right? The whole, no
Yeah.
matter
Oh
what
yeah.
facet you look at. So 128,000 people go to the hospital each year because of foodborne diseases, and those diseases that they contract kill about 3,000 of those people. And that's with the controls in place. That's with the inspections going on. Now,
Yeah.
that concerns me. When I have a president who's willing, as he said, he's prepared to run this shutdown as long as he needs to, whether it takes a year or 5 years, he doesn't care, as long
Yeah.
as he gets his way. But these are the kind of things that I don't think we can handle. We can't handle not having people watching our back. And sad to say, these are the essential parts of the government that I don't know. Call me an alarmist, call me what you want, a reactionary, whatever you want to call it. I don't like taking these people, my watchdogs, out of the way. The CDC is federally funded. Do we not?
Yeah.
Don't we want the CDC up and running constantly?
I
Right?
mean, isn't it? Wouldn't it be? I don't know if it actually is or not.
I mean, the bottom line is, John, can they tell you, okay, so military aside, they can't say, we're not going to pay you, be at work on time.
Yeah,
And
it is pretty fucked up.
I mean, you can't do that and expect that somebody's going to do it. Because if I'm a guy who, there's people being evicted from their apartments right now, trying to figure out what they're going to do. There was
No, because I remember. I remember seeing something about someone brought that up to Trump, and he's like, I think they'll be lenient or whatever, and I'm sure most landlords are
Right.
like that, as long as you're not already like 3 months behind, you know what I mean, like where you're already going to be evicted. As long as you're like, hey, look, I do this for a living, because most of the time you have to tell the landlord what you do for a living.
Right.
You're like, look, I do this. Hey, can you cut me some slack for this month or whatever? And most landlords will do it, because it is actually way more expensive to evict you and put someone else in than it would be to let you be a month or two behind.
Yes, potentially.
And
That's
it's a
the hope.
legitimate excuse too. It's not like you're lying to them. You're not like, hey, I
But-
lost it or something.
But it's it goes, it's that mindset from the administration, even the early on mindset that and even J. Edgar said it on New Year's Eve. There's all these private sector jobs out there. Well,
Yeah.
When the administration even says something like this, your government has forsaken you. Go find another fucking job.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's part of the risk of being a government employee, is that they can just end it at any time. Especially, I mean, if your job
End your
hinges on the
employment,
government,
yes, but it's
probably not a good idea.
we're going to shut the government down and not pay you. Go find another job if you want some money. That's just. It's here. Why don't you just let me pull up my shirt and you just take a big old dump on my chest?
Well, I mean, so I know a lot of them do have a second job
Well, sure,
already.
sure, because I mean it's hard to survive in this
Because the
country with
government-
just one job.
The government doesn't also pay very well.
Depending on
there's
the job,
actually-
that's true.
when I was doing martial arts, one of the instructors was a TSA agent, and so she would get done with her shift over there, and then at night go and teach karate. So I mean, and then she would get paid for it, like she was getting paid for it. So there was a second job, but it was also something that she enjoyed doing. But
Well, see, and this goes back to what we kind of talked about this a little bit off mic, but the key to the government jobs is not just about the pay; it's about the benefits that go along with it. I mean, why are you holding on to a TSA job and then working as working in a karate studio when you could just go get a full-time job somewhere else making more money? Because the benefits that are afforded from the government in many of these jobs are far better than you're going to find in the private sector.
Right, and I mean,
depending on what you're qualified for, right?
it doesn't stop your medical coverage though. The government being shut down.
But you still have to have money to make copays and deductibles. And if you're not getting a paycheck,
Sure.
well, now you have to curtail going. But if you leave the government job during a shutdown and go get a different job, well, you've quit those benefits too.
Yeah.
And that's
I mean,
why,
you get a part-time job, whatever.
well,
I don't know, but I mean, either way, it doesn't look like it's going to end anytime soon. So I mean, people kind of have to, I guess, figure that out on their own. I mean, especially being a government employee, knowing that at any time, if the government shut down, they knew weeks in advance. You would think that you would save up some money, have some money saved up, and be able to
but you
take that
even
hit
said
for a
it.
little while.
You even said it yourself, John. That a lot of these government jobs don't pay well enough
Yeah,
for you to be putting money aside. I mean, we know what the
I
economy
mean,
truly is like for those of us who are under the 50% line, right? I mean, it's not
yeah,
great out there, and one full-time TSA job, well, that doesn't leave a lot of room for putting away savings for a rainy day,
yeah. I don't know. I
especially
mean,
if you've got
it's
a
just
family. Because I know
something that you've had time to.
my old friend Jessica, they were a family of four, and when the government shut down 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago, whatever it was, they were shut down for about two weeks.
Yeah.
Um, and she was just like, "Wow, it's pretty devastating, not
Did she not
knowing
have
when I'm going to get a check, just
she had a
depending on her."
husband, right?
He was working,
There you
so
go.
but that's half their income still for a
Yeah,
family of
yeah, sure.
four, apartment, the whole 9 yards. I mean,
Yeah,
and they were living pretty tight on the budget. They're check to check, week to week.
sure.
Very little ability to save. And again, that goes back to me with unemployment, with jobs and stuff. It's like it sucks that you can't work a full-time job in this country and know that you can live comfortably, unless it's a really great fucking job with
Yeah.
your college education that you may or may not have, right?
Right.
But it's not only affected these things; it's also affected leisure, right? So we're
Mm-hmm.
seeing the impacts in state parks. Everybody that are not state parks, but federal parks,
National parks. Yeah.
national parks, where the services that are normally handled there are not being handled, right? And there's been a lot of talk about the refuse that's building up in these parks because nobody's going around cleaning, this kind of thing. But leave it to John to find the bright spot in things.
That's right.
One of the things that is happening is that there are citizens out there that give a shit, right? And so through it's a decent handful of state parks or national parks, right, John?
Yeah.
We've got citizens that are actually taking it upon themselves to go out into these parks and do the job of the federal employees who are not getting paid and are not performing their job. And this is
Yep.
where I find interesting. It's, this is, I guess this is one of those jobs where it's not like imperative that you do your job, right? You can go to sleep at night knowing that you didn't empty a trash can versus going to sleep at night knowing that you let a bomber on a plane, right?
Right. Right.
There's a big difference. Most people have not been showing up to their jobs at the state parks waiting until they get paid. So with things building up, citizens have taken it into their hands, and primarily, where was it at? Let me scroll down.
They were
Just a
talking
bit.
about Yellowstone and
Yeah, here we go.
Joshua Tree Park or some shit like that.
Yep. So they mobilized in at least these parks: Joshua Tree National Park, the Everglades National Park. That's here in Florida, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
The National Mall. That's in D.C., right?
I believe so.
Independence Hall in Philadelphia, and the Cuyahoga Valley National Park,
Nice.
where these people joined forces to go out to clean the trash up out of the bathrooms, walk along the paths, clean the paths, take
Yep.
care of floors, toilets, sanitizing, and doing the regular work of all the people. And I got to give props to them. These are the kind of people that speak America. Right.
Well, yeah. So this is what happens when you don't rely on the government to do everything for you. This is why people are charitable and they're going to do things when they know that it's not being taken care of. That's why a lot of people don't do things like contribute to charities and things like that is because they think it's already being taken care of because the government's taking care of it. As soon as they know it's not, they're gonna be the ones to take care of it. They're gonna step up. Someone's got to do it,
Right.
and I think it's great.
But
Yeah,
this
this is
is
fantastic.
but the and I will agree with that. However, I will say this. This is like one of the few areas that's possible though. Like you can't have volunteers
Yeah,
for
at the
TSA
TSA,
or
right?
air traffic
Sure,
controllers or
sure.
or at the
There's still
at the tax office or the Social
there's still
Security
a
office.
there's still a private sector, private sector solution for most of those things. Social Security, no, not necessarily, but most of the rest of what we're talking about, there's a private sector
But
uh, solution to it. Because I mean, as soon as yeah, I mean, if there's a demand for the job, someone's going to fill it.
you sure? But again, when we talk about private sector, that is always going to. It always tells me this is going to cost us more money, right? And
Mm,
that's the shitty part. As soon as a private
I
corporation takes
mean,
over TSA, it's going to cost us more money
I don't think
in
so
in
though,
the
just
cost
because
of
it's
flying.
well, no, it's going to cost it costs more to have the government involved in anything than it would for the private sector because they're going to be able to do things cheaper. They're going to be able to do things more efficiently. And we see this every
Whenever
single time.
you see the private sector is doing things cheaper than the government,
Yes,
like
absolutely.
there is some airfare cost associated with the TSA to a certain extent, but if the airlines or airports have to supply the security themselves, that cost is going to be greatly exaggerated. You know it will be
Mm,
because
I don't
capitalism is
know.
going to rear its ugly head.
Oh my God. No, because if they do that, then less people are going to be flying, which means that the airlines are making less money, which means that the prices have to go down for them to be able to get people to fly.
One would think that would be the case, but have you seen how much it costs to fly lately, John?
Yeah,
The
it's
flight is
because
the
people,
cheapest part. Check a
they,
bag.
yeah, no,
Check a
I
fucking
know.
bag and weigh a
Yeah.
little too much. Weigh a little too much and have to buy a second seat.
Oh, yeah.
It's all these things. Um, because the airlines went through a period in the early 2000s after 9/11 with everything going into place, where they were nickel and diming the fuck out of flyers.
Yeah.
Nickeling and diming. I mean, where
And
companies were like, we're going to reduce the amount of travel our people are doing because this
and
is crazy.
Midget B in the chat question: do we need the TSA? They're not generally effective. They were created during the Bush panic. They've been a joke ever since. That's exactly what I've been saying this whole time. We don't need them. We need a non-federal security force.
What would be the difference between a federal and a non-federal security force? What
Like
makes you
I've
think they're
already
going to give a shit about their job one way or the other? What makes you
because
think
they're
a
going to be
federal
held
versus a private?
because the private sector will be held accountable. If you fuck it up, you get fired and you're gone. Federal employees are a lot harder to fire.
No, they're pretty easy to fire on the TSA. Jessica used to tell me stories about people fucking up on the job and getting let go all the time
I mean,
because they weren't doing their job properly.
I'm sure there's things like if you fuck this specific thing up, then you're gone. But with kind of like yeah, I'm sure if you show up a little bit late, you're probably fine. Like again, I don't know for sure,
Do you
but I
understand
know
why?
that it is harder to fire federal employees or government employees in general than it is to fire someone in the private sector.
Do you know why we have human TSA in place right now?
Why we have what human?
Why we're using humans for TSA right now? Because
Because
they're still improving the technology for
yeah,
self-checking. So once they've got scanners in place, once they've got the right tools and procedures, they can reduce the amount of human error that goes on with TSA, and then it'll be reduced to just people checking those that register going through scanners.
the people are going to be pissed off that they're laying off TSA workers. It'll be a problem.
Well, those TSA workers will find jobs.
Right, exactly. That's what I've been
I mean,
saying this whole time.
but to say that they're not, you can say that TSA is a joke all you want, but all anybody can say about that is if like if you don't fly on a regular basis, like my brother, for instance, my brother flies twice a week for the
Yeah,
last 15, 20 years.
that's
And
ridiculous.
he has said, but that's his job, right? But he has said time and
I'll be
time
sick of it.
again, he is much happier flying now that TSA is involved in the airports. He feels safer in the skies because of it.
Well, Midget B makes a good point here. They used to have private airport security, and it actually used to be a lot cheaper to fly before 9/11.
It used to be cheaper to fly before 9/11 from the standpoint of the nickeling and diming. You could take bags, you didn't have to pay extra money for
Yeah.
this and extra money for that.
But why do you think
The
you had to pay?
cost of the airline tickets were not beautiful, though.
Oh, I'm sure.
And the
But they probably
cost of
take those
airline
extra
tickets
fees.
dropped after 9/11 because they wanted to
Yeah.
get
Well, for a
people
little while.
flying, right?
For a little while, yeah.
Well, at the same time, they were jacking up other costs because of fuel. Think about fuel cost.
Well, yeah.
That's
No,
where a
they also
lot of
had.
these additional charges come from.
Yeah. And I'm sure the TSA, again, I don't know for sure, but I'm sure the TSA gets a bit of that money from the, baggage fees and things like that. It's probably, subsidized a little bit by the airlines.
I mean, if
Again, I don't know for sure, but
I mean,
I
it's
imagine that's what's happening.
anytime you have humans involved, you can't expect 100%.
No, of
I
course
don't care
not.
if it's private or
No.
government, right? You
But I
just can't
expect some
expect
kind
it.
of competency, you know.
Competency, but I mean, what's an example of non-competency? I mean, when I'm seeing that there's no planes blowing up in the skies or being hijacked, I'm pretty comfortable with their competency level. They're stopping things from happening. I mean, do you have any? This is what killed me. No lighters, no knives, right?
Yeah.
Jessica used to tell me that they would take pounds, tonnage of knives and lighters that people were carrying onto planes, still continuing to do, knowing that they couldn't, and just
Yeah.
and all these items that they couldn't take on, and they lose them, right? But
Yeah.
they were taking, it's just this sheer amount of it that is being caught. So these things are being found. Things are being stopped from being taken on airplanes, right? That could present a
Mhm.
danger to the people on the flight. Plus, we have air marshals on many, many, many flights. Somebody
Right.
there that can handle a crisis situation if need be, which
And
wasn't
that
there
I don't
before.
and I don't have a problem with that at all. I think that's actually a decent idea.
But they're
You know
part
what I
of
mean?
the
It's just like,
TSA in a sense.
no, aren't they
In
under
a
something
sense,
else?
they're air marshals. They're part of the
Well, yeah,
federal
but the
federal police
law
marshal
enforcement,
program, law
yeah,
enforcement, but they are
but not
associated with
TSA.
the TSA. They were put into place with TSA to
Right,
be
at the same
a
time, but I
stopgap.
don't think they're affiliated
No,
in the
that's
same
why I
way.
say they're. That's why I didn't say they were TSA. They're similar. They're like TSA. They're part of TSA in a sense,
Mm.
but they were enacted at the same time, and people feel safer flying.
Yeah,
People that don't like flying or have a problem with it are people who are
yeah,
standing in line for an hour to get through a security check when they didn't just go and do the pre-boarding. My brother's got a pass. He doesn't wait.
yeah, yeah,
He's a frequent flyer. He's like I forget what they call it, but he's just got the card where he can just walk on through security without any issue. And everybody has that opportunity when you're flying, right? You
yeah,
can
yeah. No, I
sign
saw
up
that
for
line
that,
before. Yeah,
but nobody, most of these normal flyers, they don't do that, and then they get pissy because and they see TSA as a failure because they can't get people moved through the line fast, this, that, and the other.
oh no, see, Orlando International is really, really good about that. It's when I usually go to O'Hare that it's fucking garbage.
So what
I
you're telling
usually
me is TSA is not a joke itself. It's location based where it's a
Well,
joke.
no, 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 no. It's definitely a joke everywhere. What I'm saying is that they have less of a hard time in Orlando because of its like it's designed to get people through. It's designed efficiently because we have millions of tourists every year that come through, so they need to get people through all the time. Whereas somewhere like O'Hare, you're going there for business or to visit family. There's not as much tourism going on there in Chicago. I mean, there's a little bit, I'm sure, but just not as much as there is here in sheer volume.
Well, when it's all said and done, you know, if we're not going to pay these people, if we're not going to, we can't expect them to do the work. But we can't sit around. I don't know. The American public doesn't seem as concerned about this shutdown as they should be.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't affect most people, so I mean, I can see why
Well,
they're not.
it hasn't affected most people yet. It's
Yeah.
starting to have impacts on people across the country. And we're going to see more and more of that impact as people realize, oh shit. It's just like Jay Edgar said on New Year's Eve. Why is he
Hmm.
not able to take his cruise yet?
Oh yeah,
He can't get his
but,
fucking
but what
passport.
did he say? He's fine with that, you know.
Well, it's catch 22. How long are you gonna? But how long are you fine with it? If it's another 6, 8 months, he's
Yeah,
gonna miss his window for that trip,
I'm
right?
sure he would have been more pissed off if he had already, paid for it, and, booked it and everything. But
Well, but if he had done that, he would have already had his passport. He needed that passport for that,
right,
right?
right,
So,
yeah, but you can't get right now anyway.
right, that's the point. You can't get that. Social Security checks. I'm wondering there's gonna start to be issues there with Social Security. Um,
Maybe, I don't know.
I'm just glad it's not affecting at the state level, and that I think is the buffer that people are that
Right.
makes people more comfortable because on your state level, your state government is still functioning, right? There's no
Yeah.
shutdown there. It's these why people
White
problems.
people problems. Yeah, that's right.
Uh,
All your little first world problems. Oh, can't get a passport.
well,
Yeah.
it's gonna start being non-white people. It's gonna start being welfare problems too. Those benefits are
Wow,
gonna
that was
start being.
racist.
No, is more. I said it's going to be more than white people problems.
White po people.
I mean, it's going to be welfare problems because, well, I don't make
Well,
I don't make the statistics. I just know that there's a
mo-
larger percentage of minorities on
I
welfare
know. I was just giving you
programs than
shit.
anything else. But that's going to be impacted here soon.
Well, there's actually more white people on food stamps, but yeah, see, Social Security and Medicaid stays active, right? And your food stamps, unemployment, things like that are handled at the state level, which are also
Well,
not shut down.
we don't have what federal funding do we have for? Is it
I believe things
Medicare or
like
Medicaid? Is that still?
yeah,
Is that
yeah,
not
that is
handled
still
from the government, the
it
federal
is it
level?
is handled there, but it's still open.
It's
And
still.
I believe Section 8 housing is a federal thing, but I'm not 100% on that. But I
Oh,
mean, they're
I
not
did
about to
see,
kick you out of government housing.
and I did see a headline about something about Section 8 where they're not getting their subsidies for Section 8 housing,
Yeah.
which could create problems for people being able to pay their rent that aren't even federal employees, right?
Well, I
Um,
mean, they're paying like $7 a month for rent,
I think it's a little more than that, John.
and obviously those, the apartment buildings or whatever they are going to be getting that back pay. They realize that, and they're just going to stick it out. They're not just going to kick out whole blocks of people because they missed a month. I mean, come on.
I don't have that much faith in people, John. I really don't. If I can't have faith in my own fucking government to do their job,
You should never
it's
have
hard
faith in the
enough to have
government.
faith in the rest of the people out there.
You should
Um,
never have faith in the government.
well, I mean,
Always just assume they're gonna fuck it up and let them be pleasantly surprised if they don't, and not disappointed if they do.
well, now that they're talking about legislation for marijuana legalization, I want the fucking shutdown to be done. Give him his
Yeah,
fucking
that's true.
wall. Give him his fucking wall.
Yeah,
Give
I'll
him the
trade you a
wall.
wall for
I don't
weed.
give a
Yeah.
yes. I'll trade the fucking wall for weed. I'll step down. I are fine. I mean, it's ultimately I'm not against having the wall. You know me. I'm like shut the fucking borders across
Yeah,
all the way across. Planes, trains, automobiles. No more in and out by
that was a good
non-citizens.
movie.
It was a good movie. Are those two
Yeah,
pillows? Oh,
yeah,
what was it?
yeah,
Where's your hand? Between two pillows. Those are
yeah,
pillows.
yeah, yeah.
Um, yes,
Yeah,
and
that's what I just said meant to
people.
be. Yeah, exactly. I mean, they're not just gonna kick out an apartment, complex worth of people because they missed a month. I mean, that's exactly what I was saying. That would be ridiculous.
And I can understand your optimism there, but just remember this: none of these people are guaranteed a place to live. There are no guarantees in this for those people. There's no guarantees for anybody involved in this. Nothing. I mean, it's an open door for who knows what. My question is how long can we live? How long can we go without a functioning government?
Um, Hopefully forever.
So
A
let's.
functioning federal government, obviously.
Well,
I'm
right,
fine
a
with the state
functioning
government
federal
existing.
government. Is this maybe an opportunity we want this to go on for the next 6 to 9 months and give states a chance to rise up and take power away from the federal government?
Right. I
Is
mean,
that possible?
they can do the job that the federal government's been doing for them. And then people will see, hey, look, we don't need the federal government to run our day-to-day lives. We can do it ourselves, or we can, if you're on welfare or whatever, we can look at the state as opposed to the federal government itself. We don't need the nanny state to hold our hands.
So I'm
If we
kind of curious why there are no states that are actually taking up the gauntlet then and saying, okay, well we are going to fund the TSA, we're going to fund the parks, we're going to fund
well, they
all
don't
of these employees that are in our state, and we're going to take over the funding for that during this time of crisis while our federal government is shut down,
because
and
they
then
don't need to
ultimately
yet.
seal their ability to take that power up for themselves.
Well,
I
they
mean,
don't need to yet. For one,
don't
they
need
don't need.
to.
No, no, no. So for one, they don't need to yet, right? No one's been clamoring for that. And two, most of the people at the state level, like most of the politicians at the state level, have aspirations to get to the federal level. So they want to go into the House or the Senate or Congress, whatever. So they want to move up. And so if they minimize their future power by bringing the power to them now, then they're gonna have less power as they get up there, which means that they're gonna have less lobbying money, things like that.
I see it as a golden opportunity for the states to
God
take
damn,
back
can't stop
to.
coughing.
I see it as an opportunity for the states to take back power from the federal government
Yeah, I
and
would absolutely love that.
take it all upon themselves.
Yeah,
I mean, a smart state would. I'm surprised some place like Texas doesn't do something like that and be like, okay, and
well,
at the same time, we're going to go ahead and cede from the union. Yeah,
yeah,
we're
Texas
done.
can't
We're going to
afford
cede as
that.
well. Or is it secede?
Texas,
Or
yeah,
it's just
Texas
seed?
secede,
Secede.
sissy with an e instead of a u.
Yeah, well, yeah.
But no,
Enunciation, pronunciation.
Texas can't afford that. They talk big, but their wallet doesn't speak like that.
Dude, they got cows. They got
Yeah, they got
ranches.
cows.
They got ranchers.
Yeah, well, they also
Everything's.
got floods and hurricanes, shit like that. Like they talk about secession all the time until a hurricane comes by, then they're looking for that sweet government check.
It's funny that you bring that up because that is another area where funding is being taken away from. And you remember, Mr. Trump has said that, the option is on the table for him to call for a federal emergency at the border and get the wall built
Right.
that way. But he said, that's not the route I want to go, right?
Yeah.
But he's also repealed or pulled back from what he said the second time to California about all the fires and FEMA being sent out there. First, it was the governor's done a bad job. He should have been more prepared. We can't
Which is
continue
true.
to pay for these things. And then he
That
turns
part is
around.
true.
Well, yes and no. I mean, there's only so much you can do, John.
No, they had
I
all
mean, it's
kinds
not
of
as
vehicles. They had all kinds of vehicles and stuff that weren't being maintained and that being used even.
but John, only you can prevent forest fires, not
Well,
California.
I guess.
That's
Damn,
that's what
I
Smokey says.
failed. Yeah, I failed.
But then he
I
turns
used to know a guy
around.
named Smokey.
Right. Then he turns around near the end of the fires, near the end of all this shit, and FEMA's on their way out there, and he's like, "Oh, we've got your back. Anything you
Yeah,
need, we're there for you. We're supporting you 100 all the way. We're there for you." Now,
yeah.
this past week, guess what? You guys are fucked again. We don't like you. We're pulling FEMA funding.
But wait, so wasn't he talking about using like unallocated funds, like for the wall?
He was talking what in regards to the federal emergency situation.
Yeah,
He
because
would
if he
have used the
declared an
military.
emergency, right? But what I'm saying is that there was unallocated funds that I think would have otherwise gone to the military. That's the whole point of him declaring an emergency, so that he would have the power to use the military
Right,
in
but
order to build the wall, but with these unallocated funds.
sure, but in declaring that emergency, he can also pull from FEMA.
Yeah,
Those
but he wouldn't
those
need to.
funds become available when you're talking the tune of $5.7 billion. Yeah, I'm thinking you're going to have to tap into a lot of money.
God damn, I'm dying.
Yeah.
I might not make it to the end of the show.
Well, folks, it's going to be a one-man show moving forward. So say your goodbyes
Yeah,
to John, and
yeah. Rip F. John.
I don't know. I want it to get solved now that I know that they've got legislation for weed on the board. But you know me,
Yeah,
I've been the whole time. I've been like, look, you should not be fucking the American public this way. These
yeah,
people, there's a lot of people that work their ass off for our government, for this country, outside of
yeah.
the military that are doing things, and those people need to be respected and not used as hostages.
Well, hopefully the Democrats will step down because we know that Trump's not going to.
Yeah,
So,
that's
and
a.
the Democrats have got to be feeling the pressure at the moment. They got to really be feeling pressure.
But what amazes me is he's supposed to be the great negotiator, the great deal maker. Yet,
Yeah.
these power plays of, well, screw you, I'm taking my toys and I'm just going home if you're not going to do what I want. That
No, he's not going
that's
home.
I mean that's a hardcore power play to make. Well, home at the White House. He had to leave the Senate floor to go to the White House, whatever. But it's these power plays. These things. You're not just making deals in a fucking boardroom anymore. You're playing with lives. You're playing with
Yeah.
people's pursuit of happiness, right? You're stepping on life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness for a lot of people, and that's just a shame. He needs to get his head out of his ass, and they need to get their heads out of their asses and find a
Yeah.
middle ground to get this thing going back again. We need to just get back to being the fucked up country that we normally are.
Right.
But hey,
Sure.
I'll leave the opinion to you folks out there. If whatever you think needs to happen, but I can tell you this: we've got to have a government operating at doing certain things. So, love it or hate it, we can't live without it.
No comment.
It would melt too many snowflakes.
That's true.
I mean, just think of the flooding. Think of the flooding.
That's true. Yeah, we would need that FEMA check.
Right. Right. Now, speaking of snowflakes and all the assorted fun that goes on with them, John, you brought something to my attention here, and I find this kind of interesting. And I'm going to let you speak a little bit more to this because before we get into the back and forth on the validity of it or non-validity, as it were. But can you go ahead and tell us a little bit about Mr. Noah Berlatsky and what he's come out with?
Yeah. I'm not sure exactly when that was posted, but he's basically, I've looked at a bunch of the articles that he's written. He's, I guess, an op-ed writer, and it's all about, white supremacy and racism and, how it permeates our culture, things like that. And he wrote one, I'm not sure how recent it was, but it was just brought to my attention this morning, where white people who try to do their best to have their children succeed actually what's the word I'm looking for? Actually like perpetuate inequality and white supremacy because they're trying to do what's best for their children. So I think we should pull the article up. I don't know if you actually have it up right now. You do.
Oh, yeah, it is on the screen.
Yeah, so it's white kids, racism, and the way privileged parenting props up an unjust system. So, and if you read this article, I mean, I can't really read it, so if you want to read it, that's cool. But it basically boils down to, if you try and do what's best for your children, you are being racist and propping up an unjust system. and perpetuating white supremacy.
Let's see what he has to say. So this past October, my son and his classmates lobbied their small private school to change the official holiday of Columbus Day to Native Peoples Day. Jesus Christ, that just flies all up in my face. My son wrote a short letter to the faculty explaining why they shouldn't celebrate white imperialism and that Native peoples were too often ignored or erased or pushed to the side in discussions of American history,
So,
which
let's
is
talk about
exactly.
that for one moment, because
Yeah, please.
he only mentions white imperialism, as opposed to every other imperialism that's happened throughout history. It's not just been
Well,
white people who are imperial, who
well,
have
he
been, you know.
Well,
Go ahead.
he's referring this, but ultimately it's this mistake that Columbus was white, because wasn't he a Spaniard
He was Italian.
or Italian? He was Italian, but
Yeah.
he was contracted by Spain,
Yeah.
right? So there was no. I mean, if you want to, I guess Italians are white, but they were a different country.
You
Yeah, they're a
guess.
different country. I don't know.
It's still
I have,
European.
all right, they're European, but white
Yeah.
imperialism.
I mean,
And
they're not like Anglo or anything like that. Yeah, our Italian's white. I think we can make it white. That's fine.
what do they
I'll
call them?
accept Italian.
What's the horrible thing they used to call them? Guineas.
Guineas, yeah.
Yeah, I could never understand that when I was a kid and I heard that I'm like, what do they have to do with guinea pigs? But
Yeah, it's cute.
here's the thing that okay, in this first bit, that the son and his classmates were lobbying for, saying that Native peoples were too often ignored or erased or pushed to the side in discussions of American history. Yet that's exactly what happened to the Native Americans in this country throughout American history. They were
Yeah.
ignored. They tried to erase them and push them off the fucking continent. That's just exactly what happened to them. So if that's how it's being taught in school, if they're being ignored and they're being erased, well, that's exactly what we did to get this country.
I mean, I learned quite a bit about, natives and stuff like that when I was in school. And I was in school in Charleston, South Carolina, which is about as far south as you can get without being in the water. We even did projects where, like, it's cultural appropriation, but we had to pick a tribe and then dress up like that tribe to give a presentation about that tribe.
Well, to take Columbus Day, which okay, great. You can say all the negative
Yeah,
things you
whatever.
want about Columbus, and to change it to Native Peoples Day.
Yeah,
It's
well, the thing about
that's
Columbus
just
was
an insult to me.
he was no more cruel than anyone else in his
No,
time.
no. I mean, this was commonplace, right? You
Right.
settled the land and you took it over if nobody else had claim to it, or you wiped out whoever did have a claim to it if you were such an aggressive person, right?
Yeah.
See, yes. Also, schools ignore the bloody parts of Native history. The slavery, genocides, unprovoked attacks on settlers. Yeah, those things were
Yeah.
doing. Those things were happening. But yeah.
Yeah, we don't talk about that because we can only have, white people have to be evil and everyone
Well,
else
hold
has
on,
to be
hold
good.
on,
That's the only way it works.
hold on. Though, I'm going to say this right now. I don't care what anybody says. Native Americans were not being evil. They were just trying to keep what they had, which was a land that they were able to roam around freely on, and they were here first. We were here first. I mean, I
So,
come from Native American heritage.
oh
We were
Jesus,
fucking here first, right?
you and
We,
Elizabeth Warren both, right?
and it
You know
wasn't
what?
like
I
what
want to see your 23andMe. I want to see your ancestry.com.
I don't mind. I don't mind providing that, except I don't have it, and you'll need to pay for it.
Fuck.
Right.
You know what? We'll do a charity. We'll do a GoFundMe, and we'll get our two listeners to to fund it for us.
But no,
Maybe I'll do one too. You can see how white I am.
the bottom line was, these were, there was an indigenous species here. Indigenous
Yeah.
from the standpoint that they were here first, that were systematically began to be pushed aside as colonization spread, right? There's
Yeah.
no doubt about it. And, consistently fucked over by the white man. We got to call it the white man because it wasn't, slaves weren't doing
Yeah.
it except at the behest of the white man. And the entire goal of the white man in this country was to take as much of the land as they possibly could and make it
Well,
their own.
originally it was survive.
Well, sure. And who helped them
That's all it was.
survive? Who
Yeah,
who
native,
supposedly helped them survive? The fucking Native
natives. Absolutely,
Americans.
yeah.
And they turned their back on them and stabbed them in the back.
There was a lot more that goes into it.
Sure. But Native
Yeah,
Americans
there you go.
weren't.
Sewell's correct about that. I was trying to remember exactly which tribes they were. It might have even been the
There was
Iroquois.
I thought wasn't that wasn't it who was it that came here first? Like Eric the Red, the
Oh, the
Norse,
Vikings,
the
the
Vikings and
Nords.
stuff. They
Yeah,
had made landfall, and sure, but when you say genocided a group of humans in the Americas,
yeah.
a group of humans that were here, or a group of humans that came here? Because I mean, again,
Well,
if
they also
somebody,
genocided themselves. I mean, they genocided each
sure, they
other.
fought amongst themselves,
Oh yeah,
but
tons.
where does that not happen?
Oh well, yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, that's
But I
just
mean,
normal, right? That
but see, the
happens
thing is,
everywhere.
the narrative is always that they were just hanging out, chilling, being peaceful, and
Well,
then we came along and just fucked them all up. Whereas, that's not true at all. There's years and years and years of war.
well,
They
sure,
even created a nation. The Iroquois Confederacy
sure.
was a nation. The Sioux Nations were,
So what you're
a
saying
confederacy of
is,
nations.
there were a bunch of people already living here, having
Yeah,
their own world go on, and someone
yeah.
came in and tried to take that shit over.
I'm just saying it's more nuanced than that, but that is the result. Yeah.
Now, you say a group that came before the Native Americans, but I mean, because the Native Americans have direct ties to like the Incas. Am I
So
correct?
the Incas and like also East Asia.
Right. So, I mean, doesn't that predate most exploration that was going on, even as far back as the Norse exploration,
Yeah.
like the Vikings and stuff? The
Oh yeah.
Incas, the Incas, because when did the Incans disappear? For the most
Um,
part, but that was them.
the Incas, I believe it was around. It was probably after actually the Aztec and Mayans and Olmec and all them in Mexico and Central America.
And it was a scattering, right? I mean, like those ancient tribes, they scattered. They were the precursors for the tribes that we see today,
Yeah.
or saw then. There's not that
Right.
many of them left these days. And it's not to say that there weren't bad moves on both sides, but it's to me it's kind of like, okay, so if China decided they wanted to colonize here in America and they set up camp down in fucking Georgia, come in on the coast and set up in Georgia, what are we going to do?
You
Are
know
we
what's
going to
funny
sit
is,
around and just let them start pushing us to the side till we all fall off the edge of California and they take over?
well,
No,
no,
we're
we
going to
do
fight
have,
back.
yeah, we do have sovereign borders though. But you know what's funny is that there's actually evidence that the Chinese found the West Coast at some point a long time ago,
That's not
and
surprising.
yeah, and just didn't like stay there, colonize it or anything. So yeah, that was a thing too. So
So
perhaps, oh yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I was just looking at the seawall
Oh
and
yeah,
midget
no,
talking about the.
I was just trying to fill dead
So they're
air.
getting prehistoric on here, as opposed.
Well, yeah, because we're
I
talking
was just
about
going
who
back
was
like
here first, right?
300 years, whatever. I was just going back about that far.
Yeah,
Let's
it was
see.
just who was here first though. That's the thing.
Well, who was he? I had
Can you
to, well,
genocide a genocider?
here's what I do know. It wasn't Anglo-Saxon whites.
Right.
That wasn't the case, right? And that's what it boils down to for me. I mean, no matter what else happened, there was a systematic purge of the indigenous species that was currently on this continent. There was and the things that went on. I had a great my apparent supposedly, you know, my great great grandfather was found by white settlers that were on their way out west,
Yeah.
found in the snow in his dead mother's arms. They had been walking on the Trail of Tears. and she died, and he was laying in her arms, and they picked up that baby and adopted him, and thus that's where the name Brasher came from, and
Oh
from
wow.
then on, that's where my family line came from.
Nice. You
But
just doxed yourself.
well, God
Very
help
good.
us all.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I mean, if you've ever read of about the things that went on during the Trail of Tears, that purge where they were moving
Yeah,
Indians out of the
absolutely.
way, it was horrific. And
Yeah.
even now, I mean, I find these kind of things where I get we've gone off on a tangent, but still, it irks me that people want to call it
Right. Yeah. This is
Native Peoples Day or whatever, or Indigenous race day
Indigenous
or
Peoples
whatever,
Day. Yeah.
indigenous peoples, yes, for people that barely exist in this country anymore. I mean, it's
Yeah. I mean, it makes people feel better. It
it's a
alleviates some of the white guilt.
right alleviates it. Uh, it
But yeah,
almost be
let's
like having a slave recognition month, right?
right.
Who would
Well,
that piss
yeah.
off?
Oh God.
Right? But
Yeah.
anyway, so continuing on, in this story article, he says, as you imagine, my wife and I were very proud. We'd hoped to teach our son anti-racism, and here he was doing anti-racist activism in his own small way. Whatever. We were glad we'd sent him to a school that encouraged kids to speak up. One of our ongoing societal challenges will be figuring out ways to move beyond individual education and address the root issues of inequality and our role in upholding them. He goes on to say that the school is a private school, but sending kids to a private school is an option you only have if you have a certain amount of money. In paying for
Yeah.
him to go to that school, we were at least partially abetting a system that benefits more affluent people, and affluent people in the U.S. are often, though not always, white. We sent our son to a school that taught and encouraged anti-racism. But teaching people to be anti-racist doesn't necessarily address the structure of racism itself. In fact, racist structures often determine who does and does not have access to these kinds of educational opportunities. One of our ongoing societal challenges will be figuring out ways to move beyond individual education and address the root issues of inequality and our role in upholding them. Did he not just repeat himself?
Yeah.
There.
No one said he was a good writer.
Okay. Margaret Hagerman, a sociologist at Mississippi State University, talks about these difficult contradictions in her book, White Kids Growing Up with Privilege in a Racially Divided America. Hagerman spent 2 years with 30 families in a Midwestern city, observing affluent white parents and their children and interviewing both groups about race and racism. She babysat, took kids to activities, and listened in the car as they gossiped. Some kids claimed that black students in their school sold drugs and were dangerous. Others talked about ways in which black friends were unfairly singled out for punishment or even had their bathroom access restricted. Um,
Yeah.
is John, you went to a military boarding school when you were younger.
Yeah.
Would you say that equates to the same as a private school, or no?
Um,
I don't think you do. Do you?
I guess I would. It's a specialized kind of school. But I mean, I did receive a better education than I did when I was in like public schools before that. And I mean, not only that, but they were more on top of you. We had like a mandatory 2 hour study time every night where there was, the teachers would take, shifts. Like on Monday, you would have this teacher would walk through the hallway of the barracks, and he would make sure everyone's doing what they're supposed to be doing, being where they're supposed to be. Didn't always work, but there was at least the attempt to force you to study for 2 hours every night. And so, I mean, made sure, someone like me who had a problem getting their homework done and turned in, it forced me to do that. I had no choice but to do homework. So, I mean, that helped me in that way. But yeah, I mean, I would say it was a private school. Absolutely.
And you're a believer that private school education is better than public school education, of course.
Yeah, absolutely.
But do you think it's do you what was your education on as far as racism is concerned?
I mean, it was I guess it was a majority black school. So, I mean, I had firsthand experience, you
So
know.
I guess so, and the reason I ask is so they were talking about Hagerman talked to these parents and it's some of the things that they found out. So some parents, Hagerman found, preferred to keep race unspoken.
Mm-hmm.
Families she interviewed in a wealthy conservative suburb, for example, tended to avoid the topic of race with their children.
Yeah.
They adhered to a colorblind way of thinking. They would say that race doesn't matter or that we're beyond race.
Yeah.
One girl told Hagerman that in her school they weren't even allowed to say the word racist. It was on a list of forbidden words that also included homophobic, sexist, and racist slurs.
Yeah. See, I think that's a problem. I don't think there's any problem with talking about it, especially with, if I was white, I had black. My roommate when I was in military school was black. You know what I mean? Like if we didn't bringing it up and kind of talking about the differences, especially in like a joking and like a friendly ribbing kind of way, it brought us closer. We were friends, and so it's kind of a bonding thing when you can kind of throw little friendly jabs at each other, like we do on the show. You know what I mean? Like it kind of strengthens that bond when you talk about the differences as opposed to just trying to ignore it and walking on eggshells around each other.
Well, let me pose a question to you
Hmm.
about in that vein. So, if we are teaching the differences between races, or we're talking about the differences in races, does
Yeah,
that not foment racism in effect
I don't
by
think
pointing
so.
out that there are racial differences, so therefore there is a reason to be racist versus
Not at all. I think it
teaching that there
fosters.
is no difference in race?
I think it fosters like a sense of understanding. You understand this person more as an individual as opposed to like a black person. You're like, oh, this is a black person. You must think like this, or you must, act like this. You really get to know someone as an individual, and I think that's more important.
Um, well, but if you start spewing out statistics, okay, if you take the average white person and you throw statistics at them from the
Hmm.
standpoint of, let's take crime or
Yeah.
socioeconomic factors, things like this. So if you're talking to
Right,
a
exactly,
white
Midget
person
B.
that
That's
is what
that's what I was trying
normalizes.
to say. Right, it normalizes the differences. It makes them not a big deal. You're not,
Okay,
constantly focused on the race.
okay. So if I tell you, so say you're an affluent white person, a white kid, and I
Hmm.
tell you, okay, so you know, larger percentage of crime in this country is committed by blacks and Hispanics. Um, most of the socioeconomic balance, most of the impoverished in this country are black and Hispanic. If I tell you that, if I'm talking about the differences in the races in that way, and you're an affluent white kid, am I not telling you that, how do you keep that white kid from saying, oh, well, I'm better than them? And then when they see black people or Hispanic people, when they confront them, how do you prevent them from confronting them in a way that they feel better than them because they are part of the group that
I
is
don't.
not committing crimes, that has money? How do you teach that by teaching the differences?
Exactly what Midget B is saying there in the chat. Because I think maybe I'm not articulating it very well, but what Midget B is saying there in the chat is exactly what I'm trying to say. It normalizes them by making it acceptable or comfortable to talk about. Comedy is healing. So I'm not saying like you go, to your black friend and you're like, hey, look at all the crime you guys commit. No, that's you're gonna get punched. That's fucked up. But you can talk about differences and your upbringing and things like that rather than trying to be like, oh, well, I have to walk on eggshells around this person, and then that makes that person feel uncomfortable around you because you're not being yourself. You're being this, like, you're putting up a front. You know what I mean?
Um, see, well, I can see the point. It may be better to prepare someone by telling the truth than for them to find it out the hard way and make them even more racist. I can understand that. However, I guess my argument here is that um, we don't, it's like Midget B said, comedy is healing. Well, people that have been oppressed in this country, they don't have as much of a sense of humor when the oppressor is making the joke or trying
I
to be a
think
part of the joke. It's
I think you would
okay.
be surprised.
It's okay for. I'm not saying there aren't. I've hung out with cool black people where we could have the funny, racially motivated conversations.
Right.
But when you start, you can't do that as a whole. You cannot do that as a whole because it does create conflict. If there are minorities out there, oppressed people, or who have felt oppression from generations back. This is kind of a thing that bothers me. Is like, why are you so uptight about slavery? How far back do you have to
Well,
go to find a slave in your family history, right?
well,
But
I mean, you don't say something like that to, one of those kind of people. You
why
don't you
can't
don't
you have that
say that.
conversation? This is the whole
I
point
mean,
to
you
what you're telling me
can.
is we want to normalize it so we can have these
No, no,
conversations.
no. That's not what I'm saying. You don't like normalize like, haha, you were a slave one time. That would be
I
ridiculous.
didn't say that. I'm saying having a conversation. They
Yeah, you can have that
a
conversation as long as
lot
you're
of these
comfortable
oppressed
with that
people don't.
person.
A lot of these oppressed people are much like feminists. White men don't
Yeah.
have a voice in the conversation,
Well, yeah, so you don't hang out with somebody like that. I'm talking about like,
but you realize it's the majority
I don't
of
think that's
the
true.
majority of the minority does not want to hear bullshit from white people about racism because they see us
I
as
don't
the
think that's
cause of
true.
racism. We
I
are
don't
the
think that's true. I think it's a very small minority of, black people who don't even want to hear about a white person or even want to see white people. I don't think that's true of the community at large.
I tell you what, midget, in the town you live in, do you feel comfortable going to most sections of that town and just having conversations about racism and how we can normalize our conversations and talk about racism? Because I've heard
Oh
some
my
stories
God.
about where you're at, and it's
You're completely missing the point, Robert. I'm not talking about just going up to a random person at the
John, I'm
gas
talking
station and
about
start
no,
talking about
you.
racism.
Yes, you want to normalize the conversation across the country so that everybody can have a discussion about this.
No, I'm
Because
saying no, no, no. I'm saying like person, you're a friend with or someone that you're familiar with. You don't just walk up to someone in a gas station and start talking about racism. That's not what I'm saying.
but that's what we need to be able to do.
I don't know. I mean, really? I
I mean,
mean, I
if
don't
we're
think we
going to
need to.
talk about
That's
racism,
again, that's again just focusing entirely on racism, on race, and not about what makes us individuals.
right? So therefore, that goes back to exactly what I wanted to say in the very beginning: is we don't need to talk about racism. We don't need to be teaching our children that racism exists. I like the idea of teaching kids that is not something we have to discuss because if you don't give it fuel, it doesn't become a fire. If
Right,
children
but I mean
walk
that
around
is
thinking that
reality,
racism
though.
doesn't exist, then they're not going to be racist. Now they may
Uh,
feel the impacts of
later on.
racism from minorities, but they are not walking around having preconceived notions of differences in races that affect their perception of those races when they confront them.
Yeah.
Does that make sense to you? You see what I'm saying? I mean, by talking about it, I think we keep fueling the fire.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't think it's good to like shelter your kid from the fact that racism exists. I think it's something that you should discuss and, obviously tell them that, there are some bad people who don't like people for, the color of their skin or whatever other characteristics there might be, and walk them through logically about how that doesn't make any sense. I mean, that's the best you can really do. You can't control what their thoughts are or anything like that, but
Now,
I don't think ignoring the problem or ignoring that it exists is helpful.
Now, Seawall points out, he says, racism may be an innate characteristic of humans as we are tribal social species. Babies will, on average,
Yeah.
react more negative to someone of a differing race than their own. But that kind of speaks back to what we talked about on a previous episode with the racist baby, right? A 4 month
Yeah.
old baby is not racist.
I
That's
mean,
just a
yeah, that
natural
just has to,
reaction to seeing something different.
right. It has to do with in-group preferences, is what that is.
I mean, one of my stepdaughters has a Hispanic boyfriend, but he's very light skinned. You really wouldn't be able to tell he's not white. She doesn't fucking like him at all. That baby does not like him at all. He comes in the house, she starts crying, and
Yeah.
I am darker than he is.
Yeah.
So it's, this is just, and I can understand that we as a species will do this from a societal standpoint, but, you know, pointing out the differences creates inequalities in our minds. We start to judge and we start to categorize people
Well,
based off what we know about each other.
it depends on how you point it out. I mean, if you just go around saying, "Oh, look at these differences," but it's how you go about having that conversation. It's how you go about uh, talking about these things.
And where should that conversation start at? That's the big question. Does it need to be a conversation that needs to be had in schools and education?
I don't think that the school should be responsible for that sort of thing. I think the parents should be, and then let the kids, if they go to a school that's, they're just gonna have white, black, Hispanic, Asian people, whatever. They're gonna learn, these people exist, and that they're people as well, and that for any kind of differences that there might be, we're more alike than different. Maybe the upbringings are different. For the upbringings are different for any group of people. For any two people, who talk to each other, their upbringings are completely different. So I mean, when you see, but it'll teach you to see people as an individual as opposed to them for their race by interacting with people.
So ultimately, the full on context of this article is that by the wealthier people who are able to send their kids to private schools are fomenting racism. They're propping racism up by creating, because of these inequalities, socioeconomic inequalities, right? So,
Yeah.
We're going to have a racist society as long as we have private schools for kids to go to.
Well, I would say read that last paragraph before we move on, because that's what really kind of sums up what the article's about.
It says, of course, as a parent, you want the best possible future for your child, but the best possible future should include a society that isn't organized around racism. Hagerman's book is a careful, painful, and convincing argument that when white people give their children advantages, they are often disadvantaging others. Racism is so hard to overturn in part because white people prop it up when they work to make sure their children succeed. Now, I think it was it Seawall or Midget who pointed out that Asians are very much the same way. Asians strive to have their children go to the best education, whether
Absolutely.
it's private schools, charter schools, whatever. So, you can't. There's a fallacy there. Like they're not going to be.
Yeah.
Asians aren't white supremacists, right? That's not.
Same,
But Asians are
they
very
are,
racist.
though. Yeah, it was Seawall, but yeah. So I mean, that's the thing is, it's funny when people have this point of view about white supremacy, and then you point out, because they'll point out the racial gap, the race pay gap instead of the gender pay gap. Talk about black people on average make a lot less. It's like, okay, well, Asian people typically make a lot more than white people on average. So why don't we deal with that disparity too? Well, that's different, right? Because they're not white. It's the same thing with this,
Well, I've told you before, and I'll say it again. There is a simple solution to this. There is a way to start. There is a way to begin reducing and eliminating racism in this country, and it starts at the very fucking top. And it's two things. We make equal rights for all American citizens. Fuck
which we
this
have.
literal specificity. No, because we have to see that we're calling out black people get rights, Asian people
Everyone
get rights,
has
gay
rights.
people get rights. If they just say citizens have these rights and
They do.
remove affirmative action, get
I agree with
rid
that.
of it. Get rid of it
Yeah.
and stop propping racism up through our government. That is the key right there, because that creates so much inequality, so much division amongst the races, one way or the other. Somebody is always getting left behind when affirmative action is in play.
Yeah.
And that is what keeps racism and inequality from a sexist standpoint, gender inequality, all of it is deeply rooted in affirmative action. And it is outdated. It is no longer necessary because we have a litigious society that if you don't get a job and you can prove that it's because of your race or your gender or your sexual orientation, you can sue the fuck out of somebody.
Yeah.
It's easy to sue somebody these days. So we don't need people getting passed up for college tuition because of one or they have certain groups that rank the top of the list from year to year. One year it's women, and one year it's Native Americans, and one year it's this, that, or the other that are that they're categorizing who's at the top of the priority list for getting money and funding for schools and businesses. This is fucked up. That is what makes racism live in this country.
Yeah, discrimination is not the answer to discrimination. Sorry.
Look, one thing for you two to chew on. Black kids coming from families make $200K plus per year have roughly the same SAT scores as white kids who have families that get less than $20K per year. These are the averages.
Is that true? I don't know. I don't know if that's true or not. You want to look that up?
Jesus, John. Do I look like a researcher?
No, but you have Google.
And you don't?
No, I'm too busy looking at myself in my camera.
It looks like you're looking at porn.
No. Both my hands are right here.
We can see the reflect. I did say jerking off.
Oh.
And whichever way, we can look at figures, we can look at numbers, but I can tell you this: there are geniuses in every race. There are hardworking individuals of every race. There are lazy pieces of no good shit in every single race out there.
Yeah, it's true.
What it all boils down to is that we've got a government that systematically plays us against each other, makes us feel like we're not equal to each other, so that they keep us at odds and thus are better able to control us. And gives them an excuse to increase government legislation and government control. It really is, plain and simple, exactly what this government does. It's been the same mindset since 5,000 years ago when the fucking Bible was written. That's always what you do. You keep people at odds with each other, and the overseer gets to pull the strings.
Yeah, it's true.
So ultimately, that's a vote for keeping the government shutdown in place, but it doesn't get rid of affirmative action at all, one way or the other. But I don't think private schools are the reason why racism is propped up. I don't think because it's about opportunity, and those opportunities are out there available. Even you said yourself, there are private schools that have scholarships and funding that is apportioned to bring in those that are less fortunate that couldn't necessarily get into a private school, right?
Absolutely,
so there are kids being educated in private schools of varying races, varying economic backgrounds, and I don't know that they're producing a bunch of racists. I don't see that happening. Granted, if it's an all white or an all black, go to Morehouse College as a white person, it's going to be a tough time for you in school, and that's it's that kind of thing. But when it's all said and done, it's not the people, it's not us doing it. I don't give a shit what race you are. What I give a shit is about whether or not you're a shitty person. If you're a shitty person, your skin color doesn't matter. Your gender doesn't fucking matter. You're just a shitty person.
We are kind of pressed for time, though, so we should...
Why are we pressed for time? Moving. Are you in a hurry?
Yeah, I got to pee.
Oh, that... Jesus Christ. So,
I've been drinking all this water and trying not to cough, and then, coughed anyway.
I had to point this out, because this was kind of... I thought this was kind of ironic. Al Roker... defended a local meteorologist who was in Rochester, New York, and he was doing a weather broadcast, and he fucked up. He had his tang got tangled. Here we go. What does Sewell say? Family income differences explain only a small part of the SAT racial score gap. The Journal of Blacks in Higher Education, January 22nd, 2009. But they've gotten a lot smarter since 2009.
I don't know.
That was horrible.
Yeah, we'll have to look at it once we're off air.
Um,
We'll look.
but anyway, this weatherman was talking about a park that was named after Martin Luther King Jr. And when he was talking, he tripped up and he meant to say King Jr. and he stumbled and he blurred the two words together and it came out sounding like he said coon.
Right.
Yeah, he says it was. He said it really didn't even. It wasn't even a full word. So it was just more of a sound. So he probably said something like "coonier," like when he was stumbling. Well, he was fired. The social outcry, social media to the rescue, gets this guy fired 2 days later. And so much, and then Al Roker comes out and he says, it was a screw up in talking on camera, but I mean, like you said, anyone who has done live TV and screwed up, Google any number of ones that I've done myself, understands what can happen.
We've never screwed up, so I don't know what his problem is.
Well, we've never screwed up that we'll admit to.
Yeah.
So, in a statement to the Today Show, the station said, since our decision to terminate his employment, the station has been caught in the middle of a vitriolic political debate. We believe we have done what is right for our station and our community and will continue to take a strong stand for our personal and professional values. He stumbled on his fucking tongue, and yet social media has cost him his job. Thank you, Snowflakes.
Yeah. And Seawall in the chat says this stream is more professional than CNN. I mean, that's not setting a very high bar, though. So, I mean, while I take it as a compliment, I don't think I don't think that says anything good about us necessarily. Just more bad about CNN.
It's kind of funny. I appreciate the props, though.
Yeah, definitely.
But in that vein, CNN used to be a respected news source.
Yeah,
once upon a time, and then and then fake news came along. Everybody took sides, right? But speaking of Snowflakes, so I found this interesting, and especially if he does manage to follow through on his potential 2020 run. But Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, he has is throwing it out there at the Snowflakes and says that the Snowflake generation sits around looking for reasons to be offended, like say weatherman who gets his tang tangled on the air and scrunches two words together by accident, right? He says while praising the current climate for allowing people to be who they want to be, the 46-year-old actor said a certain sector of society are actually putting us backwards. I don't have to agree with what you think, what somebody thinks, who they vote for, what they voted for, what they think, but I will back their right to say or believe it. That's democracy, and he's right. You don't have to agree with them, but you stand up for their right to say it, right? So many good people fought for...
What a novel concept.
Right? So many good people fought for freedom and equality, but this generation are looking for a reason to be offended. If you're not agreeing with them, then they are offended. And that is not what so many great men and women fought for. And he's right. Snowflakes are out there begging to be offended. They watch for it. They look for any fucking thing that will offend them that they can fly off the fucking handle and make an issue. And then turn around and get enough people to cry with them. And then you see these things. Guy gets fired from the newscast because he made a grammatical error. He screwed up in talking. A teacher gets in trouble for using a black student as a slave in a class presentation. I mean, okay, well, how are you, what the fuck? Why are we doing this? And it's, unlike CNN, they don't disparage people based on race. We don't.
That's us.
We don't do that, do we?
That's what he's saying.
Right. I know. That's what I'm saying. We don't do it. That's good for us. We're good about
that.
Yeah,
that's good for us. Yeah, we're cool people.
That's how we stay on platform.
Hopefully.
But, it's it's not only that they look for reasons, but they create reasons. And I think the hypocrisy is best shown in an article that came out this week or this past few days about a couple in England. Well, they were on a date.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, that's a good story. I like this one.
So it was on Reddit. And it blew up on Reddit. And over in the UK, man and woman go out on a date. Now, as I understand it, according to his text to her, she invited him to go to dinner, right? To go out on this
Yeah,
date. So they go out on the date. They go in and sit down at the restaurant. They order their meals. This fella orders a carbonara pasta and a beer.
which is delicious, by the way.
Right. She proceeds to order the fucking lobster, the expensive lobster on the menu, and for herself a $90 bottle of wine.
90 pounds. That's a
90 pounds. So
yeah.
all told, her portion of the bill in US dollars was $120 plus. Whereas
Jesus.
his in US dollars came out to about $20.
Yeah.
He said, I'm not paying. We're going Dutch on this.
Hell yeah.
And she flipped the
dude.
fuck out.
My dude.
And she reached out, she reached out to him, they in conversation is in text, and she says, he asked her, she said, you were really expecting me to pay that? I'm a student, not your sugar daddy. And she
Right.
said he was so fucking rude. And here's what she said: gentlemen always pay for the girl's food.
Yeah, but I mean, also the rule is though, if you're the female and you're getting lobster and expensive wine, you're supposed to put out.
Ah,
That's the rule in dating,
and the irony was
especially
that
first date.
uh,
If you're gonna pull shit like that, you have to put out. That's just the rule.
And
I don't
she-
make the rules. That's just how it works.
she said something to that effect to him in the text that they show. And unfortunately, this doesn't have the full text. It's on Reddit if you want to go look at it, which is kind of fun.
No one wants to go to Reddit.
Right. But she basically tells him the only reason why you went with me is so you could have sex with me.
If
That's
he
why he
wanted to
went
have
out
sex
with me.
her, he would have paid that bill.
But he was smart. He texted her back and he said that may be true, but then I realized I might not have the $20 for the sex. Because I'm a student, not a sugar
Yeah.
daddy.
This guy
And,
is fucking heroic. I love
And
him.
I did love that. Also, he made sure and ended the conversation because her response to that was "fuck you," and his response to her "fuck you" was Stalin, a picture of Stalin putting up the heart sign, and then I was like, "Bravo!" There you go.
My dude.
But this is what amazes me is this woman. She's feminist enough to ask the man out on a date. Now, you
Yeah.
want to get old school. You ask somebody out on a date, you inherently
You
are
pay.
taking responsibility for paying for the date, whether
That's
you're male
right.
or female. I saw the advent of feminism in the 70s. That's what that meant, right?
Yeah.
But then turn around and you want to play feminist that way, but then you turn around and want to support misogyny by saying the gentleman
Robert.
always pays.
Hey, Robert.
Yeah.
We should go to the bar tomorrow, and you should pay my bar tab. You want to do that?
No.
Ah, damn. I was hoping it worked for her, so I was hoping that,
John?
or it almost worked for her.
If it helps, right now I can't even afford a tab. The soda.
The soda. Do they
Right.
even make the? Do they even make those anymore?
They
Do they?
still do. I believe they do. And RC.
Well, yeah, of course they make RC RC cola.
See, well, feminism does not fight for equality. It fights to preserve female privileges, strip male privileges, and give them to females, and burden all of the responsibility on men.
Absolutely correct.
That is correct.
Yeah.
That is third wave feminism for you. Enjoy
Yep.
the ride. But I see this constantly. This kind of attitude
Kind of
of
entitlement.
right. There's the entitlement of gender, but the entitlement of feminism, just like racism factors in as well. I white people are racist. But thank God there's affirmative action to get me my education, to get me my
Right.
bills, this, that, and the
Yeah,
other.
thank God the white supremacist system is giving me a ton of advantages.
Right. I don't want your white supremacy, but I will take your white socialism.
Right.
You know, it's this, and this is where snowflakes are at these days. They're looking for these little things. Like there are so many women outraged by this, right?
Yeah.
That
Oh, I'm
is,
sure.
it's like, are you fucking kidding me? Are you fucking
Yeah.
kidding me? If I were a woman, I would be like, what the fuck is wrong with this idiot witch? I'm
Right.
like, what the hell? Who does that? I mean, what day and age do we live in that it's okay to do this? I mean, she's a gold digger.
Oh
That's
yeah.
that's exactly what a gold digger is. She expected to have sex with him, and she was going to make him pay for it
Right.
through that meal. Women have
Yeah.
been doing that for a long fucking time.
Oh
you
yeah.
know, um,
Either way,
but
you're paying.
but
I mean, no
it's
matter what.
he's Sewell. I will fight for 50% of my mine worker deaths to be female as long as the feminists demand 50% of CEOs be female and not fight for the 50% of deaths. Nice.
Yeah.
Um, and this is why John, I have such a problem with social media. I have such a big issue with the younger generations as they come into power. Social media is giving snowflakes far too much voice, far too much
Far too
power
much
to control,
validation.
too much
Too much
validation.
validation.
Yes,
That's what it
to
is.
to
The voice thing is good. The problem is that it has to be my voice,
right.
every time. It can't be like, oh, let me, listen to what someone else has to say. No. If they disagree with me, they need to go.
I mean, and they will destroy a person's livelihood
Oh yeah, they have no problem doing it.
with little or no provocation. I mean,
Especially the people who claim to have a monopoly on empathy, and then they'll just destroy your livelihood at a drop of a hat. Yeah.
yeah, I don't think empathy is at a premium these days anymore. It's a sad fact of life.
Yeah.
But that being said, it's I don't know. Global warming might take care of the snowflakes, but I don't know. I don't think it will. I kind of
Yeah.
hope it will. But where's Darwin when you need him?
Yeah, right.
Hashtag equality, motherfucker. No,
Yeah.
no simpy for leftists. Nice. But till we can take. I don't know. I think social media is going to be the new voice of government eventually. So I'm scared about that. But I'll be dead soon. So that's what I'm
Yeah.
figuring.
It doesn't matter anyway.
I'll just stay here in my panic room and
Yeah.
lock the
From the
fucking door where nobody
fallout
knows.
shelter.
Exactly. I got potatoes over there.
Perfect.
But anyway, so that's we're gonna hit it up for the night. We're gonna be done with this. We appreciate you too. Gen Z actually doesn't like social media as much. So
Yeah,
there's
I think
somehow.
Gen Z is the hope for the future,
Well,
but we'll see how they fuck it up or not.
now I will say this from living with a couple of Gen Z, they don't like social media as much for posting things. But man, they fucking keep an eye on everything that everyone else is posting.
Right.
They lurk. They are lurking and looking for reasons. They
Yeah,
really are,
it's true.
because they're entitled to, right? They're entitled to a voice. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe they'll start to get away with it. My hope is, honestly, is that Facebook goes the fuck away.
It's also said that Gen Z is far more conservative, and like obviously in general,
And that's
not
scary.
well. I mean, it's better than the lefty millennials that we've been dealing with for the past 10 years now.
I don't want it on either side. I want this. I
Well,
want
no, but I mean, as the pendulum swings back towards the right, you're gonna hit that center again for a
Yeah, but
while.
why won't it hold the center? That's where we need to do, is we need to find a way to hold the center. Isn't that
Yeah.
what they say in every good battle? Hold the center, hold the center.
Well, yeah, you want to
Don't
hold the center, yeah,
right.
because then your flanks can support the center. But that's
Generation
tactics. Who needs
Cyclone.
it?
Cyclone.
Yeah,
But anyway, folks, thanks for being with us tonight. We're glad to have you as part of the conversation.
yeah,
You
for
guys
sure.
were keeping us going and giving us lots of fuel to fire. We appreciate you being here. If you like what you heard, give us a like. Reach out to people and let them know that we're going to be around. Don't forget, Monday we're going to pretend to do a show on Monday. May actually get it done. I think we can if John's not too busy on his other guest appearance on his fancy show with Jay Edgar. That I am.
Yeah, and I'll be on Oprah on Wednesday.
Are
So
you?
no,
Wait, is she going to interview after Bezo after she's done with Bezo in Times Square, or before?
I have no idea. I just picked a name.
That's funny because
Yeah.
she's going to be she's going to be
Yeah,
interviewing
whatever.
him. Do you like Bezo? I mean, are you?
I
You
could
do.
give a fuck less, especially right now. So I
What
get
if he's
pissed.
President Bezo? John,
He's
I've
not
had to
gonna be.
piss for the last 2 hours, and you see how well I've composed myself. I'm not a
Yeah.
mamby-pamby crybaby that feels
I mean, I
entitled to a
was
bathroom break every fucking 5 minutes. Get
I was
yourself a
faking it.
goddamn bottle.
I was faking it for a while until you wouldn't shut up.
So
So
you got to pee right now. So if we were to start talking about Niagara Falls, that
I
would be
will
bad.
leave. I will leave. I will get up and I'll go to the bathroom and I'll come back
All
and
right,
I'll finish.
folks. Thanks for hitting us up, John. We're somewhere on that Tweety Bird somewhere, aren't we? What are we at?
We're at the Gen Gap P on Twitter.
All right. Well, remember that Gin Gap P,
P.
John. P.
Right.
Do you have P? All right, we're out of here. Thanks a lot, folks.
All right,
We'll
see you
keep
guys
this
Monday.
conversation going soon. Peace out.